13 people. Okay. And Joanne has started the recording just in case we need it. Okay, and we've got 13 people, and now it is 12:35, right, Joanne?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to get started. And Joanne, if there's like questions that come up in the chat or whatever, just feel free to interrupt. I've got everything. I'm only seeing the slide deck because I just don't want to be distracted with too much stuff on my screen.
Okay, no worries.
Great. So just jump in and interrupt. Okay, let me just, there we go. So welcome everyone. If you could introduce yourself in the chat, just what your name is and where you're currently working. I'm actually going to launch a poll in a second just to sort of see who in the room has actually taken part in the SVOS. And I just realized answer as your organization and not as you as a person. So that's helpful. I didn't think about that little wrinkle. So we're just going to go over some basics about what it is, who can participate, benefits of participating, the cost, and a bit of the history, because the history of this tool actually tells us about why it is the way it is, and what we are looking for this year, and some future growth. And then after that, we'll sort of close off with some comments and questions, and hopefully it'll be, with 14 of us, perfect size group. We can use it as a bit of a brainstorming or kind of focus group. So I'm going to launch the poll just to sort of see, okay? And it's a basic question. Has your organization participated in the SVOS before? Just so we know. Oh, one more person joined us. That's great. Hi, can you let Lynn? Okay. Hi, Lynn. I see that you just joined the group. This is great. We're just getting a sense in the room of whose organization has participated in the SVOS before. You guys are going to be a great resource for this during this presentation as I go through it. So far, I've got 13 out of 13 people who have answered that, probably, and that's probably exactly right, because Joanne and I would be the 14 participant for 14 and 15. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So we've got a really kind of a fairly even split between organizations that have participated and organizations that haven't. So that's great. So this is going to make for a really, really good discussion. I'm going to stop sharing. Go away. Okay. So next slide. So what is the Standardized Volunteer Opinion Survey? So it is actually a well-researched and designed survey tool that addresses key dimensions for a successful volunteer program. Pavro has been offering the survey once every 2 years since, I believe, 2007. This comprehensive survey tool provides a unique opportunity to seek feedback from volunteers and to benchmark. That's the key thing. It's standardized, so you can benchmark with other organizations from the hospital/on-site healthcare sector. So the online web-based survey consists of just over 40 questions that are designed to assess a variety of issues. So 7 survey dimensions: volunteer experience, orientation, recognition, impact, teamwork, patient/client safety, and general safety. There are also 5 demographic questions, and questions are either in a rating scale format or free text, allowing for comments and input by respondents. And we are actually seeking input. We still have time to add additional questions for this year's survey. Obviously, it'd be great to incorporate some things related to COVID, to the pandemic, and possibly around equity issues as well, because that has certainly something, those are themes that are much more prominent this year compared to the last time we ran this. So who can participate in the SVOS? So currently, the way, based on who has been participating in the past, the survey is tailored to volunteers in an on-site healthcare setting. So it could be acute care hospitals, complex care hospitals, rehab hospitals, mental health hospitals, long-term care, and hospices that actually are, on site. So people are actually staying there. And this format, this kind of focus on this one sector allows us to benchmark similar types of volunteer programs. But we have
Which organization does a survey specific for volunteers at medical settings that I've never heard of before. So it's just
What's
a half
that?
hour webinar.
Sorry, say that again, Lynn.
I'm on the one for administrative updates. Very long-term care programs. But asking questions.
Okay, I think somebody is like, are they asking a question or somebody has to maybe be muted?
But the answer is there's gotta be a happy medium for people whose this is their
Okay.
life. Because they've never to see their loved one's family is.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a background discussion. So if you could just mute yourself, and then we'll have a chance to all chat. That's great. And Joanne, you do, I think as a co-host, you have the ability to mute. Okay. So, and always from the beginning, we have always thought this is such a great tool. It could be potentially expanded to other community settings if we had enough organizations participating, obviously. So what's the final report look like? So there's one final report as well as a presentation, and it provides an intro to the survey, overall summary with key highlights from the survey, along with tables, bar graphs, text to summarize the results of each question, and survey topic dimension. For instance, communication. Individual organization results as well as group averages are presented, and you can see the high performers for each topic or dimension. Each organization receives the main report and presentation report, as well as a copy of their organization's raw data in an Excel document. However, the demographic data is scrubbed just because obviously if you've got a small number of volunteers participating, we don't want you to potentially identify them. So obviously great, there's some key benefits for participating organizations. You can get comprehensive feedback from your volunteers, very comprehensive. Identify strengths to champion within your program. You can identify, so you see the strengths, you can see some of the weaknesses or areas for improvement. You can learn from the high performers, provide a form for benchmarking with similar organizations, and it'll give you data to provide to support outcomes based on measurements, goals, and accountability. So we've really kept the costs very consistent over the years. So really, in some ways, it's costing you less this year than it has in the past because simply due to inflation. So basically, the charge is $2 per volunteer, but there's a minimum of 300 to a maximum of $1,750. Now, we do also have a $175 admin cost, but if you're a Pavro member, that will be waived. And we're not planning any increases for the cost in 2022 at this point, because we do recognize that a lot of organizations are still, from what I'm hearing anecdotally, love to hear what your experience, but some of these organizations have brought back volunteers and others haven't. So we just want to see, this is a trial balloon. Hopefully we'll have enough people participating. We do need at least 10 organizations to make it worthwhile. And generally the cost of this type of survey is substantially less than employee and patient surveys. So a bit of the history. So this survey tool was originally developed by Christine Birch, the late Allison Caird, Joanne Feinschweibel, Michael Fleiss, and Heather Hardy. So they all worked in hospitals, and they came together. And what I'm showing you actually is the book that was published, their book that they published in 2016, Measuring the Impact of Volunteers. So, and I just took a little bit of a sort of a description from the book.
So Alex,
Amazon.
sorry,
Yes.
just to interrupt real quickly. So Betty is asking, can you clarify that this survey is not for community hospice volunteers, only residential? Is there a plan to change this?
Aha, that's a great question, Betty. Yes. So I'll just go back. So as I said, because of the survey, the history of how this was developed, it is currently only for residential. So that's why we call it on-site. But yes, it's for residential. We would absolutely love to be able to offer it more broadly. And so So I think as long as we had enough organizations participating, like hospices that offer community-based care in Ontario, I don't actually know how many there are, but certainly if there were enough of them, we could definitely run it that way. We could potentially run it, maybe not this year, but we could run it next year. So that is definitely worth a conversation, because that has always been our dream, to offer this tool to other settings, right? But we just need enough so that people can benchmark, organizations can benchmark with between one another. Does that make sense? So we will keep talking about this, absolutely. So again, so going back a little bit to the history. So we are, this book basically states that the approach really focuses on the long accepted principle that simply counting heads and volunteers served does not give a full picture of the value of volunteer engagement in an organization. So what they did is they sort of adapted this idea of the balanced scorecard, which is like a performance measurement tool that was developed for the corporate sector. And they kind of turned it into a tool for measuring volunteer impact. And they created this unique volunteer resources balance scorecard. So this hospital-based team worked with the senior research advisor, and they basically piloted this in 2006 with 9 Toronto hospitals. Okay, and there was some funding available through the Department of Canadian Heritage, Government of Canada. And then the survey tool was gifted to Pavro. And so we've been offering this survey to hospitals to help basically hospital healthcare sector biannually. So every other year since it was first piloted in 2006. So the last time we ran it was 2019, just before the pandemic. At that point, we did have quite a few complaints, and I'm sure some of you may be aware of those that have participated in the past, that there were all kinds of errors in the final reports. And so what we initiated was a request for proposals for a new consultant to provide the statistical analysis and reporting. So at that point for 2019, we engaged Metrics at Work, which is a leading provider of organizational measurement and consulting with core expertise in employee engagement, action planning, organizational change, and leadership development. So Metrics at Work used our prior report format, but did make some changes, suggest changes to some of the rating tools with the questions. The 2019 survey was offered to over 4,000 volunteers in just over 20 institutions, representing over 40 sites. We were supposed to offer it again in 2021. We surveyed the 2019 customers, and based on their feedback, we decided to delay the survey for 1 year. It didn't make any sense to offer it a year ago because very few hospitals had volunteers back on site. So for this year, we do hope to encourage greater numbers of alternative healthcare organizations like hospices, residential hospices, long-term care organizations to join. There are some that do participate, particularly long-term care organizations that are associated with hospitals, but we'd love to have more of them, because as we get more of those sorts of organizations, we can segment the data quite easily so that we create the opportunity for LTCs, for instance, or hospices, residential hospices, to benchmark against one another. For this year, we also had feedback from the consultant Metrics at Work. He basically said that our report format was actually very complicated to kind of use and kind of understand, even for our customers. So he is suggesting that we make some revisions so that, and of course, you'd still be able to compare it to 2019 data, which is great, but making the final report easier to read. Another option that we're exploring as well is offering participating organizations individualized reports so that you can very easily see how your institution compares with others. Now, of course, they would charge us a bit more for that. So what we would do is just pass on that cost to you, but looks like it would be fairly nominal cost. And if we have good feedback from that, we may just look at incorporating that piece, that sort of individualized report, into our base price. So we would give it, you know, maybe instead of the minimum being 300, it would be like 500, but that would give you that individualized report, which I think would probably be a huge value add for the participating organizations. So that's pretty much it. And I'm going to just stop here and just, if you guys want to, like, how many of us, there's just 13 of us on the call. So that's great. So put up your hand. What do you guys think? Give us your feedback. There's a few people here that are not part of like the healthcare sector. I get that. So is this something that you would be interested in for your particular sector? And if you're from a hospital, what kind of additional questions, because we are seeking your feedback. Are there additional types of questions that you'd like us to add to the survey? So just put up your hand and just unmute and chat. Yes, Joanne.
So coming from the Ottawa Food Bank, we're really an umbrella organization that serves other food partners. So we're not
Right.
client facing.
Right.
So, you know, you may want to be more accessible to other entities, that wording of patient,
Yes.
client, that would have to be more, you know, maybe it's just centered on the volunteers themselves or impact or something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly if you think that we could get a coalition of food banks, I don't know if there's a food bank kind of umbrella organization for all of Ontario.
Yeah, it's Feed Ontario.
There you
And
go.
then we also have a national,
Yeah.
Food Banks Canada.
So
might-
yeah, I think we could definitely look at the tool, and it would be because a lot of the questions that are asked are very generic, right? So yeah, we could definitely take out patient, because right now the way it's phrased is patient/client, so it could be client, right?
Yeah.
Throughout, and then now there may be some questions related to safety that may not be relevant, but there could be other safety types of questions that are asked. So yeah, we could definitely work on that. That would be a definite option. Oh, Donna.
Hi, so I've already registered to do the survey, so I'm in, but yeah, if I had
Great.
a suggestion, it would be definitely around questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of, I mean, obviously someone will find the right questions and wording, but just around how people feel welcome or how they feel the organization's doing on those three fronts.
Yeah, though we did get some contact, and unfortunately she's not here, from the manager at Women's College Hospital, and apparently there are questions like that. There's some sort of hospital accreditation survey, or hospital accreditation that requires that those questions be asked. So she was going to send me those questions. And also we did mention it to our partner at Metrics at Work, so he can also try to add that in as well. So we'll definitely be looking at that. So that's good to know that it's something that everybody feels would be of value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know. And I did see a question pop up in the chat.
So Alex, Lynn is asking, is the 175 admin fee on top of the 300 minimum or built into the min or max cost?
No, that's an extra cost if you're a non-PAVRO member. So that's the way we sort of sell PAVRO membership. Membership has its benefits, so that's one of them. Anybody else? Yes, Rachel.
Yeah, just a question about, as far as adding a question regarding COVID-19.
Yeah.
I think, for those of us in the healthcare sector, we don't have any choice about our COVID regulations. So not so much into how the organization has handled the pandemic, but
right.
how the volunteers have felt about, their safety, maybe during the pandemic, the safety of volunteering, or importantly, the organization's communications around COVID
Yes.
guidelines, et cetera.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, let me write that down.
And Alex, when you're ready, I have another question. We have another
Oh.
question from Allison.
Great. I just want to make actually, we're recording this, so I'm not going to stress right now.
Okay.
Taking notes. But thank you, Rachel. Those are great comments. Go ahead, Joanne.
So Allison, City of Ottawa, Volunteer Services. The City of Ottawa operates 4 long-term care homes.
Yeah.
She's wondering how many long-term care homes have used the survey to this point.
You know what? I would have to actually go back to the last report, and I can tell to sort of figure that out. But yeah, can I get back to you, Allison, on that? I can send you an email.
Absolutely, no rush, just curious.
That's great. No, because that would be awesome if we could add like 4. You know what I mean? Like that would be wonderful. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. So I joined the healthcare world during the pandemic. So I have no familiarity with this opportunity before.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, is it possible to see old versions of the survey just to get a more, I'm quite sure my organization hasn't been involved before to get more fulsome explanation of what it is.
So on our website, I do believe we have sample questions.
So it's on the Pavro website?
Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah.
There's a link to like a past report. I think it's on our FAQ page.
Yeah.
If you could
I'll
put
it
that
in
in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's wonderful, Lynn. If that you guys are considering it, that would be great. Yeah, so what we could do is we could send through the links after the presentation. We can send through the links to everybody, just so that you've got more information, because the web pages there's a lot of information there. So Megan, nice to see you. Go for it.
Thanks so much, Alex. So one of the questions I have sort of aligns with what Rachel was saying earlier. So when we receive this, I'm curious to know why we have a big group of volunteers who are still hanging on, who haven't yet returned. So they've been with us 2.5 years. As to why. So obviously there's a reason, be it our communication, their loyalty to the organization. But they just haven't returned yet, be it their role hasn't returned or whatever the reason is. But I'm curious because knowing that 2.5 years is a long time to be hopeful to return, I want to know why. Hopefully it's some good measures that have been put in place from our part for communication, but we'll see. So I was not sure if I should be sending this out to just our active returned volunteers or also those who are in the background. As the survey sits, if it's similar, so we actually participate every 4 years.
Okay.
We find that's a better cycle for us.
Okay.
So the questions I know are more relevant to on-site. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to have like a section for those who haven't returned. Why haven't you returned? Or what's making you still interested in returning? Something I haven't given thought to what those could look like, but around communication maybe.
Yeah.
So that was sort of something that we were curious about, because that would change our number of how many we distribute to.
Yes.
Right, like significantly. So just
that's a very good point.
Some dialogue around that and what other people think about that, because I know some organizations have most of their volunteers back, but we have maybe a portion. We have some back, not all. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it certainly, you could easily set up the survey so that, the first question is, are you active and back on site? Then you go down these series of questions. If you're not, then we ask these additional questions so that we kind of segment right from the get-go, right? And you're right, that could give us some insight as to like, why are not people re-engaging? Because it's a huge issue, not only in the hospital sector, but I think everywhere. Like, recruitment is huge these days. People are not returning to their volunteer roles, and we need to know why. What, anybody else that has participated in the past, would you guys find that useful to know why people are not re-engaging or coming back?
I would say that, like Megan, I'd be concerned about the cost and the distribution to that group. So since we have a significant number, probably back to about 75% of our team back, I'm just going to be circulating to those folks and not to people who haven't come back. At this point, I'm actually considering them as no longer volunteering.
Okay. Great. Well, we could certainly add that as an option, and then, you know, it would really be up to you guys to decide whether you want to circulate it to the non-active volunteers. Absolutely.
Alex, I just have sort of a thought. I think Betty Ann has left the call, but knowing that it may be tricky to benchmark this year anyway, because everyone's in such different places and different, having their volunteers back or not return. So it may be a tricky year to benchmark. What we find is we actually use this survey to kind of benchmark against ourselves. So we'd like to see what other organizations are doing and who has done well in certain dimensions where maybe we haven't done as well. So we certainly have used it to reach out to those, but really looking at it as a comparison to how did we perform last time? And did the measures we put in place, we develop an action plan with our advisory council. So did that action plan make a difference to our results? But I wonder if this year, if it's presented less as benchmarking against others, knowing that we're in flux, would it be an opportunity to get those hospices involved, the food banks where it is less, so they can just get a baseline measure of where are they at in their from their feedback from the volunteers.
Yeah, that's true. It could. Yeah, it would just be an individualized tool. Yeah, we could definitely explore that with metrics at work to sort of see how we can build for the future, because that's really important to us. We think it is a great tool, and we'd love to be able to offer it elsewhere. And I just see Henrietta just joined. Henrietta, oops. Yes. You're at Women's College, right? So I think you were the one who suggested that we incorporate some questions related to DEI, right?
Right. I have some questions that are going to be coming from my director, and I'll share those at the time.
Okay.
She was working, my director does human resources and volunteer services, but also she was working with the equity officer to come up with the questions that we could use possibly for the volunteer survey.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. That's really good. And it also sounds like people would really value getting those individualized reports too, because as you said, Megan, it sounds like the big thing is really, like, it is helpful to know how you stack up compared to other organizations, but at the same time, you also want to see how your metrics against yourself are improving or changing. So that's great. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Donna, do you still have your hand up, or is that from before?
It's a new hand. Yeah.
Yes.
Just building on what Megan said, being in Thunder Bay, it was always interesting to me that, you know, there's a question I think that asked for the volunteer, would you, I can't remember, but in terms of like, would you recommend this hospital to volunteer as opposed to another? And I mean, I think the situation is different in Southern Ontario, where a volunteer might be within driving distance of several different healthcare organizations. So that one is not maybe as relevant, but I agree with you, Megan. We use it as, you know, to celebrate the positives that come out of it, that we find things we're doing well, but also to see where there might be areas for improvement.
That's great. Good to know. Well, maybe maybe the question needs to be reworded a little bit, you know, like as a generic, would you recommend volunteering here? Just stop there as opposed to another place, another hospital, right? The only tricky thing, every time you change a question, then you can't necessarily compare it to the prior year's response. So it's almost like you need to create a whole other question so that, you know, you can start a new benchmark in a way.
You don't have to change anything. It's just one of the questions that isn't super useful to us. That's okay.
Yes, that's all you're saying. I got it. Okay, good. Good. Well, thank you so much for your participation. We are looking forward to, if you do need more information, we do have the capacity to extend the deadline for the registration. Joanne, how many organizations have signed up so far?
We have 3 so far, and I would say about 6 or 7 organizations have shown interest.
Okay, so we're getting really close. You know, like that's our kind of like we do need a minimum to make it launch, because obviously Metrics at Work charges us quite a bit of money. Megan, did you have a new hand up?
Yeah, that was just my question, Alex. You just hit on it. I know earlier you had said 10 to make it worthwhile. I was curious if 10 was a cutoff, where you wouldn't offer it if you didn't get 10.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, we could make that call. But we're definitely looking, because we need to look at how much money we're bringing in compared to how much we're going to have to pay. And we want to make sure that we're not at a loss. For sure. I mean, it's never been an issue before. We've always run it. So yeah, but this year, obviously coming out of, well, and I would say we're not even out of the pandemic. We talk about like we're coming out of the pandemic, but are we really? But this is just such a unique time in terms of volunteer engagement. So it's we just don't know. We'd love to be able to offer this and to expand it and to grow it. And I thank you guys for like jumping in today, because I think you guys have given us some really great ideas. Donna?
Sorry, I'm just going to say one last thing. I was really excited to see the reminder that this is happening. I think for me, it's a really good way to engage the volunteers that, as you said, have come back, and then new people that have come on board, and just to get a sense of, what can we do to keep them engaged and to hopefully build on that for recruitment. So I'm excited.
Well, and the cool thing is, if we do provide you guys with those individual responses, you could potentially even share them with your volunteers, or share a part of the results, because it is nice when you actually invite people to participate in a survey to actually like show them, you know, what the numbers look like, right? So yeah, I think it could be a really good engagement tool. Do you have more to say, Megan? Yes, please.
Just a question of next steps. So you heard some great feedback here today.
Yes.
Wondered what your next steps will be with that feedback, knowing it's a pretty quick turnaround for when the survey launches. You know, it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from this group and the responses, maybe just stick with those active volunteers for this year, because I'm not sure we'll be able to add a section. And knowing that our registration date is Friday. So it sounds like maybe just sticking with those who are back on site, but just wondered what your next steps are to incorporate some of this feedback.
Well, we're going to talk to our statistician, Metrics at Work, and because he was supposed to get back to me with a quote, and then we may, depending on what the numbers are, we did build in quite a bit of buffer time. So, you know, we might extend registration for one more month. Sorry, one more week, one more week. And then work with the statistician to sort of update, add in a few more questions at least. We definitely, I think the feedback that we got from you guys in terms of pandemic communications as well as the DEI, I think those would be really key to add in. So, and they are a survey company, so they have a lot of these questions already like in their deck, so to speak, right? So I think they could incorporate them fairly easily. But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back to them right away and just say, we've got a bunch of keeners and we really want to go with it. And then also then from here, figure out how we can start working with some different sectors like community hospice, I think would be a good one. Food banks would be another good one. We just need a pool. We just need a pool. We could do it next year and just start with some other communities that we could survey all at the same time. So that's what our next steps are. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. So well, certainly on Friday, we'll communicate with everybody with respect to whether we're going to extend the deadline, whether we're going to go ahead with it. I think we probably will based on what I'm hearing today, but we will be in touch for sure. And you're welcome to reach out to Joanne or myself with any other comments or questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you.
Okay, great. Allison, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Allison. Thanks,
You too.
Bernadette. Well, that was good. So we're pretty close.